All right, so this is the triangle that you should see on your screen, the 30, 60, 90 triangle. So yesterday it was pretty easy because it was 45, 45, 90. So I'll draw that up here again just so you can see the difference here. In a 45, 45, 90 triangle, these two angles are both 45 degrees. And since these two angles are the same, these two legs were the same. And the hypotenuse was the square root of 2. That's what we did yesterday. So today, the two angles that are not the 90, the two acute angles are different. So the two legs are different. Okay, so draw out this 30, 60, 90 triangle on your sheet. Okay, small angle is equal to the smallest side. Okay, so we kind of talked a little bit about that. Across from the smallest angle, in this case, would be the 30-degree angle right here. Should be the smallest side, so it's going to be 1. Okay, across from the biggest angle, which in this case is the 90, okay, is always going to be the biggest side, which in this case is 2. Okay, so in order to remember which one is which and which side goes where, okay, the 1 is always across from the 30, the 2 is across from the 90. Square root of 3 is the middle side. It's about 1.7-ish if you were actually to simplify that, okay, and that's across from the 60 because that's the middle angle, okay. So for 30, 60, 90 triangle, you don't just have the same legs anymore. This is one that people have a little bit of a harder time with just because it's not 1, 1 and square root of 2. Okay, you actually have to remember which piece goes where. Okay, I always remember that 30 goes across from 1, okay, and that 90 goes across from 2, and then you can stick square root of 3 in there. Okay, so copy this down on a piece of paper if you don't have that yet. That way you have that to refer to. So we're going to go through some examples of how to solve this. We're going to solve it the same way we did yesterday. We're going to have a proportion that we can set up, and hopefully this kind of makes sense with what we did yesterday. Okay, so I'll draw it up here several times on the example so you can see it again. Okay, find the value of each variable. Okay, so we're trying to find x and y. Okay, so I'm going to redraw my triangle the way that it looks here. Okay, notice that they've labeled this one, the small angle at the bottom here is the 30. Okay, if this is 30 and this is 90, up here has to be 60. Okay, again, if you did 180 minus 90 and 30, you could get the third angle, which is 60. Okay, so I'm going to set up my quote-unquote scale model triangle. Across from the 30, diagonal from that is 1. Okay, across from the 90, or the hypotenuse, is 2. And across from the 60 is the square root of 3. Okay, and I do that so that it's really easy for me to match up my sides. Okay, there was a couple questions that maybe I wasn't clear about in first period yesterday that seventh period had asked as far as how to write the proportions. Okay, I always do what's given first. Okay, so I'm going to look at what is given to me, which in this case in the new triangle is the hypotenuse, and I'm going to write a ratio that compares that to what the original triangle said. Okay, so my first ratio is going to be what's given to me, which in this case is the 50. And in the scale model, quote unquote, original triangle is the 2. Okay, that's going to be equal to whatever I'm trying to find. First thing they asked for is x. Okay, that's the side across from 30. Over here, the side across from 30 was 1. So that's going to be my second ratio. Okay, so I always do what's given first, and then what I'm trying to find second, and I always do new over original. Okay, so I do new over original. And when I say new, I mean like not the original 30, 60, 90, okay, like what we're actually trying to find. And then again, I do the given first and then what we're trying to find. Okay, so maybe that wasn't super clear yesterday where that was coming from. So hopefully that makes a little more sense. So once I have my proportions set up, I can cross multiply these two and these two. Okay, so 50 times 1, that's going to give me 50. 2 times x is going to give me 2x. Okay, so there is going to be a little more solving involved in these because you don't have the same legs every time. So I'm going to divide by 2 on this side, divide by 2 on this side to get x by itself. And if I take 50 over 2, that's going to give me 25 for x. Okay, so 25 is what x is equal to. Okay. Now, I also have to figure out what y is. Okay, so I'm kind of ahead here because I can use the same given information. Okay, they gave me the hypotenuse of 50. The original was 2. I'm trying to find y this time, which is across from the 60. That is comparable to the square root of 3 across from the 60. Okay, so y over square root of 3. Okay, so again, we're going to cross multiply these two and these two. Okay, so 50 times the square root of 3 is 50 square root of 3. That's equal to 2 times y, which is 2y. Okay. Now, to solve this for y, I got to get that by itself, so I have to divide by 2. Okay, kind of how we did yesterday when we were simplifying. Okay, if I have 50 square root of 3 over 2, you always have to check and see if the whole numbers, not the numbers under the square root, but the whole numbers out front, simplify. Okay, so in this case, they do. 50 over 2 is going to simplify to 25, and then you still have the square root of 3. Okay, so y is 25 square root of 3. Okay. Any questions on setting up that proportion or solving that or anything like that? If you guys have a question, you can unmute yourself and just ask me, and I will answer that for you. Okay. Good so far? All right, let's try, whoops, that's the same question. Try the next one. Okay, find the value of each variable. So again, we have an x and a y, so I'm going to redraw my triangle. I'm going to draw it the way they have it set up. Okay, so they have 60 degrees down here and 30 degrees up here. Okay, so in my original, across from the 30 is 1. Okay, across from the 90 or the hypotenuse is always 2. And then across from 60, the one that's left, that's the square root of 3. Okay, so let's write out our proportion. First, we're going to find x. Okay, figure out what's given to us, which in this case is the hypotenuse. Okay, we're going to write a ratio that compares that to the original, so 4 over 2. And I'm trying to find x, okay, which is proportional to the bottom over here, which is 1. So my second proportion is going to be x over 1. Okay. Any questions on how we set that up? Okay, so cross multiply these two and these two. 4 times 1 is 4. 2 times x is 2x. And then we'll divide by 2 on both sides. Okay, so I'm going to end up getting that x is equal to 4 over 2 or just 2. 4 divided by 2 is 2. Okay, then I'm going to solve for y. Okay, so again, I'm going to start with what was given to me in the original problem, which was the hypotenuse, so 4 over 2. I'm trying to find y, which is comparable to square root of 3. Okay, so y over square root of 3. Okay, so cross multiply here, these two and these two. So 4 square root of 3 is 4 square root of 3. 2 times y is 2y. Divide by 2 on both sides, and then see if you can simplify. Okay, you are able to simplify right here with the whole numbers. Okay, 4 over 2 reduces down to just 2. And then I have square root of 3 is equal to y. Any questions on how to solve that? Okay, I'm going to go back and delete this one real quick. All right. Okay, so same type of thing here. It's just a application type problem. It says an escalator lifts people to the second floor of a building 26 feet above the first floor. The escalator rises at a 30-degree angle to the nearest foot. How far does the person travel from the bottom to the top? Okay, so if you were trying to find the distance that they travel on the escalator, okay, you're basically trying to find the hypotenuse. Okay, so it's going to be approximated. That's one other thing that we need to make sure we pay attention to the nearest foot. So if you get a decimal, you're rounding it to the nearest whole number. Okay, so whenever I go to set this up, I'm going to redraw my triangle so I can compare it to theirs. They have the 30-degree angle down here at the bottom, okay, which would mean the 60 is up here. Across from our 30 is 1. Across from our 90 is 2. Across from our 60 is square root of 3. Okay. So I am given this side across from 30, this 26 feet. Okay, that's supposed to be the 1. Okay, so I'm going to say 26 over 1. I'm trying to find the hypotenuse right here. We'll call that x. And I compare that to this hypotenuse, which is 2. Okay, so we're going to cross multiply here and here. Okay, so 1 times x is just x. And then 26 times 2 is going to give me 52. Okay, I didn't get a decimal, so I don't need to worry about rounding that. Okay, it's just going to be that it's 52 feet. Any questions about that? Okay, so we are going to skip over to this one right here. Okay, so it's find the value of the variable of x. If your answer is not an integer, write it in the simplest radical form with the denominator rationalized. So type an integer or a simplified fraction. So that means no decimals. Okay, that's important here. Make sure that you follow the directions. Okay, so looking at our triangle, okay, your 90 is up here in the corner this time. Try to draw mine like theirs. Okay, so here's your 30, here's your 60. Okay, across from the 30 is 1, across from the 90 is 2, and then the last side is the square root of 3. Okay, so I'm trying to figure out what x is. I'm going to start with what's given to me. They give me this 19, and I can compare it to the side of 2. I'm trying to figure out what x is, and I can compare that to the side of 1. Okay, so if I cross multiply here and here, okay, that's going to leave me with 19 equals 2x. Divide by 2 on both sides. Okay, if I do 19 over 2, okay, that is going to give me 9.5. Okay, but if I type 9.5, that's not going to work. So 9 and 1/2. Either one of those answers will work on Math Excel, the 19 over 2 or the 9.5. Okay, either one of those fractions, but definitely not a decimal. Okay, so 9 and 1/2 or 19 over 2. Okay, make sure you read the directions on how to type it in so you don't mess that up. Questions on that one? And if I go too fast or if you need me to go back to something, just ask me and I'll do that for you. Okay, on the next one, okay, you're finding the variable of x. Okay, so in this triangle, they give us 2 triangles butted together. Okay, but we're just focusing on this part right here, so don't even worry about the other side. Okay, just focus on this part of the triangle. Okay, I'm going to redraw one over here with the 60 down at the bottom like they have. So 30 across from that is 1, across from the 90 is 2, across from the 60 is square root of 3. Okay, let's compare our triangles. Okay, given to us is 12. Okay, that's the hypotenuse, so 12 compared to 2. Okay, we're trying to find x, so the side across from 60, that compares to square root of 3. Okay, now if I cross multiply here and here, okay, 2 times x is 2x. 12 times the square root of 3 is 12 square root of 3. And then I can divide by 2 on both sides. Okay, look for anything that can be reduced, which in this case is 12 over 2. Okay, that's going to leave me with just 6, and then square root of 3. Again, it says type exact answers. That's why we're doing 6 square root of 3 and not figuring out a decimal or anything like that. Okay. Any questions about that? Okay, so find the value of each variable. This time you're trying to find x and y. Okay, so I'm going to redraw my triangle so that it looks like theirs. Okay, here's the 90, 60, 30. Okay, so across from 30 is 1, across from the 90 is 2, across from 60 is square root of 3. Okay, so in this case, they are giving us the square root of 3 side this time, the part that's across from 60. Okay, so I have 4 square root of 3 over square root of 3 equals, okay, we're trying to figure out x, so x is compared to 2, so x over 2. And then I can cross multiply these 2 and these 2. So 4 square root of 3 times 2. When I multiply those, I just multiply the whole number, so 4 times 2, that's going to be 8 square root of 3. That's equal to square root of 3 times x, or x square root of 3. Okay. Now, this is pretty easy here because whenever you divide by the square root of 3, it's a little different from yesterday. You do not have to actually do the rationalizing part, because if I have square root of 3 on top and bottom, those two things cancel each other out. Okay, just like they cancel each other out on this side. So actually all I have left is that x is equal to 8. Okay, so it's a little easier than the 1 square root of 2 because you don't have to do the rationalizing part. Okay. Now we also have to figure out what y is. So again, we're going to start with what's given. 4 square root of 3 over the square root of 3. Okay, we're trying to find y, which is compared to 1. So y over 1. Okay, if I cross multiply here and here, these two, so 4 square root of 3 times 1 is just 4 square root of 3. Square root of 3 times y is y square root of 3. Divide on both sides. And those are going to end up canceling out here and here. So all you have left is that 4 is equal to y. Any questions about that? Okay. We're going to skip to this question. It says a triangle is in the shape of a 30, 60, 90. Okay. If the hypotenuse of the outer triangle is 25 feet, find the lengths of the legs in inches. Okay. So the thing that you have to pay attention to here is the 25 is in feet, but they want the answer in inches. Okay. So whenever you're finding your answer, you're going to find it in feet, but you have to remember how to convert it to inches. Okay, so first we're going to focus on solving our triangle here. Okay, we've got 60 down here, we've got 30 up here. Across from our 30 is 1, across from our 90 is 2, and then square root of 3. Okay, so focusing on what was given to us, okay, the 25 is comparable to square root of 2, so 25 over 2. And then we got to find one of the sides. It doesn't matter which one we find first. This one says the shorter side, so that would be like the side across from the 30. So we'll start with that. Okay, so we'll start and call that x and compare it to 1. If I cross multiply here, okay, 25 times 1 is 25, and 2 times x is 2x. Okay, if I divide by 2 on both sides, okay, that's going to give me 12.5. Okay, but that's going to be how many feet long that it is. Okay, so I have 12.5 feet, but I need it in inches. Okay, so I know that there's 12 inches in a foot, so I'm going to take 12.5 and times it by 12. Okay, 12 inches in 1 foot. Okay, so that's why I'm doing times 12. Okay, so it asks for it with no decimal. Okay, so we're going to round it here to 150. Or sorry, I had the wrong thing written out anyway. Okay, forget what I said about the no decimal. Okay, there's no decimal because you multiply it by 12. Okay, so 12.5 times 12, that gives you 150 inches. Okay. Now, I also have to figure out the length of the longer side, which is going to be the one across from 60. Okay, so make sure you're paying attention to which is which. So across from 60, we'll call this one y. Compare that to the square root of 3 side. Okay, so again, start with what I was given, the 25 over 2. Compare that to y over square root of 3. Okay, if I cross multiply these, okay, 25 times the square root of 3 is 25 square root of 3. 2 times y is 2y. Now, whenever I divide by 2, there isn't anything that can be reduced here. I can't reduce the 25 over 2, so that's how many feet that is. Okay, so 25 square root of 3 over 2 feet. Okay, now, all of this right here can be typed into your calculator, and you have to multiply it by 12 to figure out how many inches it is, because again, it asks for it in inches, not in feet. Okay, so whenever I do this whole thing and type it into my calculator, okay, 25 over 12, okay, times 12, and then with your square root of 3, okay, it's going to end up being 150 square root of 3. So you can just do all the whole numbers and then just leave the square root of 3 alone. So you can do 25 over 2 times 12 and see what that is, and that's how you get your 150. Okay, the square root of 3 just says square root of 3 because it wants you to use radicals. Okay, it doesn't want a decimal. Any questions about that one? Okay. Okay, so last one here that we're going to do, okay, is this one right here. It says, Sandra drew the triangle shown here. Rika said that the labeled links are not possible. With which student do you agree? So she's saying that across from the 30 is 7 square root of 3, across from the 60 is 7, and across from the 90 is 14. Okay, so let's compare that to what I usually have, okay, which is this is a 30, 60, across from 30 it should be the 1, across from 60 should be the square root of 3, and across from the hypotenuse should be 2. Okay, now it should be fairly obvious what is happening here, okay, that these two sides are flipped, okay, because the 60 degrees should always have the square root of 3 across from that, and this one right here is right next to it, okay, so they have these two things flip-flopped. These two should be switched, okay, so looking for that square root of 3 and realizing that those are switched, okay, you realize that Rika, the second girl, was right. The links were not possible because 7 should be opposite of the 30, and the 7 square root of 3 should be opposite of the 60. Okay, any questions? Okay, so whenever you are good with the notes, I have all of these that I've recorded for you, so I'll get all those